G.I. Joe, Real American Hero.
When you do animation, you have to know what the concept is in advance, what the style is going to be.
One of the first thing he says is, I want to do an animated episode, somewhat in the 80s style. We're going to do it here at Starburns. I want you to direct it.
The idea that we came up with was G.I. Joe.
I've been told it's a G.I. Joe animated episode, which I'm excited about, because I did watch it as a kid. Although my mom... What? Okay, I gotta get that.
Guys, we're a squad. You're making me look bad.
Well, if you're so great, Wingman, show us how it's done.
Making an animation episode happens in phases. There's the, are we gonna do this and how are we gonna do it and what is it gonna be phase. The second phase is, you're supposed to be writing this, why aren't you writing it? We have these people working on something that doesn't have a script phase. The third and final phase is the, we're all done shooting the other community episodes. We're still editing them and doing this second season of Rick and Morty, but we still need a script because we have to have this thing done in time to air after the Winter Olympics, which are fast upon us. And that's the scary phase. And then the fourth phase, which may or may not come, is when you put those anxieties into what turns out to be a great story, a sort of Christ myth about this cartoon that realizes he's part cartoon, part person, and that he needs to go back to being an old, dying man.
I think the script was handed to us this Monday. It aired last night. Dan Harmon has a habit of turning things in at the very last minute, and this was turned at the very last second.
The animated episode simply plunges you into the world of G.I. Joe, and it as quickly as possible sort of intimates to you, the viewer, and to the protagonist, Wingman, that something isn't right. Something is off about the world of G.I. Joe.
What? Oh no, what are you doing?
Everyone's sort of shocked by this because no one in the G.I. Joe universe has ever killed anyone since the beginning of recorded history.
Yo, Joe!
That's the kind of stuff that we would make jokes about in the studio at the time, but we couldn't show it on TV.
We talked about for a while, the default was, okay, this must have something to do with Abed's psychosis. Why is Abed seeing things as 80s G.I. Joe? Why would he do that? He's a young fella. And that conversation led to, wait a minute, why are we asking about Abed? Why don't we ask ourselves who would be the one that would naturally be having some delusion that things were animated in that style? And the answer was Jeff, because he was a little boy in the 80s.
You guys are my friends in real life. This is my imagination or something.
There's a sort of unspoken rule in television that, everybody has to be relatively young. And it was an interesting idea for us to just go, what if Jeff was 40? What if we stopped pretending he was eternally 32?
I'm 40.
Wow. Yeah, we knew that. Huh.
I guess we knew that you had to be around 30 when we met. And it has been 5 years. And even if he had been 32, we have to know he would be...
This isn't helping.
I was a fan of G.I. Joe, so Dan and I spoke the same language when it came to we gotta have a glow effect on all the lasers. There's gonna be limited animation. Cobra Commander's gonna sound like this. Cobra! Dan and I communicated almost telepathically. We knew exactly what this had to be.
I think we'll be okay. Remember, this is all just a cartoon about action figures for kids.
Shut up, fourth wall.
The Hasbro animation universe dominated the after-schoolscape for everyone in my generation.
The thing that is great about G.I. Joe is it started from Marvel Comics. When they were drawing they were the pose kings.
They brought me as a main consultant, and we talked about how the show was done.
Larry is one of the original storyboard artists from the original series.
The old way of doing the old storyboards were, pen and pencil. You get the paper, you draw, Xerox machine, the whole 9 yards.
It's just such a lost art form, the drawn animation. You really, really miss the human touch.
I mean, it's the little subtle things like, if a character's going to pick up a glass, if you can tell a computer to pick up the glass, but it looks so mechanical. Whereas a human animator will always tell you if it's going to grab the glass, you have to draw an overshoot and then come back to it. It just looks more natural. It's not a perfect like that. That's what a computer would do.
That was the thing that Rob brought to this process, was putting the hand back into the designs.
He wanted it to look like 1980s cell animation, but that would have taken a really long time to figure out and to execute, and so it all had to be done in Flash.
What we wanted to do is kind of go back to the days of how they would draw stuff with a pencil and Xerox it onto a piece of acetate and turn it over and paint it with acrylics and put it on a painted landscape and shoot it from a camera straight down.
There's a certain look to that, and you cannot achieve that with the methods used today in order to make it look like G.I. Joe. Everyone had to come down from that level and reverse engineer how the show was made.
It was looking at screen captures. How do you approach this shading? Like, they did a specific way of getting the shine.
Still doing it in a computer, but faking it.
Every line wanted to be tapered and handmade and like run over with a pencil. And there are areas that are just painted in black because that's how Marvel is. I mean, these people are comic book artists. They like areas of black and shading and dramatic lighting.
Battle stations!
Hasbro, the notes that were saying, like, can we make sure that the lasers are red and blue like in the old series and not like real bullets and stuff? And I go, oh yeah, don't worry. Everything's gonna look exactly like the original series.
It's Wingman. He's escaped. Lay down a suppressive fire.
First call I made was calling Julia Vickerman, who is like a genius at character design. Not only is she love this style, she is brilliant with capturing likenesses with very limited amount of line.
I started by watching a lot of Community, kind of noticing what, typical stuff that you would try to pick out if you're going to draw a caricature of someone, like what features do you need to emphasize the most to make them read as that actor. Rob, he kind of had ideas of what he wanted in terms of taking elements from existing G.I. Joes from the original series, and then we would just kind of combine them with the likenesses of the Community cast.
I've been compared to G.I. Joe, never.
We're all sort of, I guess, an 80s G.I. Joe character.
Well, welcome to Cobra, Zim Zam.
Let me tell you one thing, I look way better than Jim Rash's character. You hear that, Jim?
Jeffrey, are you okay?
Jeff took the longest just because I think Rob and I had a lot of back and forth about the size of his forehead. Like how far to take that.
Shirley's pretty hot. They took at least 20 pounds off me, and I am very grateful. I am thinner and taller in my G.I. Joe self, and thank you, animators.
I believe the writer's way too kind. They actually had me chiseled with abs.
Annie's gonna be like a sexy sailor. I'll take elements from Shipwreck and then incorporate them into a more like, go-go boots.
She's hot. I was like, oh, look at that bod. I wish that I looked that way in like a midriff sailor outfit. I'm not quite sure whose fantasies were playing out in this G.I. Joe video game. Maybe mine.
And we designed all the characters, and then we're just kind of waiting for Harmon to finish everything.
It's a condition that comes on when you get to a certain weight.
Oh, I see.
So is there a Mr. Tight Ship?
Once Harmon did his draft, then he'd added in like 12 new characters. So I kind of came back after thinking I'd been done for like a couple months, and I kind of came back and did those 12 additional characters, which was like sleep apnea and hat muffs is one of my favorites.
From the beginning of the scripting of an episode to getting the animation back is 6 months. And we wanted to create a whole episode almost fully animated in less than 2 months, which is almost ridiculous.
You write the script, and then you do like kind of like a radio play of everything, and then you cut the storyboards to the radio play, and that turns into an animatic.
Normally, all the voiceovers are finished before you start animating. Well, we are animating on scratch, which was the wrong audio.
Everything that came back from the animation companies were just off lip sync because we had replaced the final audio. So I'll get in a project where it's just the character, and a lot of times there's no mouth. So my job is to put the mouth on and to start lip syncing, moving the mouth into the positions whenever he moves.
Yeah, well, since none of you can kill anybody, how do you think you're gonna seize me?
I am the creator of your reality. I am Neo in the third act of The Matrix. I'm also Neo in the first act of the second Matrix.
Older animations, they were really limited on mouths, so you could get away with about 6 to 8 mouths. I'm used to working with several, like 12 to 20 mouths, but this was really limited animation, so 6 to 8 mouths was plenty.
If this were a cartoon, there'd be a word for cartoon in our language, which there isn't. There'd also be less movement, less detail, and constant lip sync mistakes.
I like that they added that because it's like, I mean, yeah, these are problems that we have to deal with on a daily basis, is making sure the lip sync is correct.
They asked me to do the intro for the G.I. Jeff opening titles, and they wanted me to go ahead and try to do what I did before in the 80s, like give us a brand new title and just let your imagination go, just have some fun with it.
In the opening title sequence, the Cobra robot, it took 2 days to make that thing move. The storyboard called for like a giant Pacific Rim style robot to come in and smash through the camera frame, and like the dust would go everywhere, and then you'd pan up to see it screaming its war cry with tongue flailing. And I worked for 2 days to design the front and side view and like walking of it.
Rob approached us with plenty of time to sort of develop a look. He said they weren't getting final animation yet, except for a couple little pieces of it. So he said, here, take this and see if you can kind of maybe show me something that looks like old hand-drawn cell animation.
And they put like a little jitter, because back in the day, they would take acetate and put it over a painted background, and they would, take a picture, and sometimes it moves. Sometimes it's not as perfect. Those little imperfections, you can kind of feel like the artist, the hands were actually touching this thing. We tried really hard to mimic that, and it makes all the difference in the world.
We did a few things. There was sort of a chunk of layers that got applied on top that just gave it sort of a griminess. There was some thinning out of the outlines of the characters, and everyone around here was calling it an age pass. It just felt more authentic.
There was nobody really opposed to making it look old.
The fact that Rob pays that much attention to the detail of old animation it's great. He's got a unique passion for detail.
One of the things that I'm really proud of is Cobra Commander is holding on to Jeff's leg, and they're going through this time warp with all this red kind of stuff. That, until the very last minute, we didn't know what that was going to look like.
I can feel it!
Was a specially designed sequence with a system called Scanimate, and it's an old 70s, 80s style computer graphics that if you were to see the computer, it'd probably fill an entire room, and there's only 5 in the world.
And they did all of these commercials and all that kind of old school CG, pre-Tron CG, and I just out of the blue went, oh, I remember this guy, and then I emailed him. I said, hey, would you have time to send us something this weekend? We're desperate. I said, I wanted it to look like how Megatron turns into Galvatron in the Transformers movie. And he sent us all like this amazing CG stuff, because he still has one of the computers, and created like these amazing, totally accurate backgrounds.
And we kind of just took it and turned it and made it more horizontal in some shots.
You can't get more 80s than this. It's got chrome, it's blue and red, and the CG. Oh, I was in heaven. That made me very proud that like every level of this was accurate.
Why do I just have random pains in my body?
Ryan Nagata, who's a good friend of Dan and ours, who worked at Channel 101, who is a genius of building props. We hired him to do the characters and the props.
Oh, look at that. It's a child's toy.
He designed the sub-chapter right here, which he just scratch built from a bunch of different, I don't know if it's G.I. Joe stuff, but he just kind of finds a way to make it work.
G.I. Joe must be destroyed. Cobra is coming for attack.
One thing that I thought was very interesting, doing the commercials is the kids, they didn't know how to play with action figures. I had to teach them how to make them walk. Originally they were like this, but I had to, no, you gotta grab them by the ankles and make them walk like this. When you shoot with children, you can only shoot for like 8 hours. It was really, really hard. And eventually, if you look closely, the kids are no longer involved. It's just like the makeup ladies with their sleeves pulled up, dancing around with the characters.
Yo, Joe, bruh!
I don't know how we did it. We were drawing stuff like this Monday.
Your idea was doing exactly what we did to those other guards back at headquarters?
It was proven effective.
I don't know, seems kind of cheap. From an animated perspective, very cheap.
This feels like a real 80s cartoon, like where everyone's just slammed for time and they're just banging it out as fast as they can. And
I was having fantasies of like, if I got hit by a car, I wouldn't have to go to work anymore.
You don't have to make us feel bad.
My all-time favorite moment was when we got all the scenes into the edit bay, and the executive producers, the directors, all went into the edit bay and started to watch it all down for the first time, and that's the first time I heard anybody laugh at the episode.
It was pretty exciting to see that come together, and all that horrible pain and stress that Dan Harmon puts you through kind of makes it worth it when you nail that look.
Graffiti is bad. Go play sports.
Cool! I get it!
It was very much like, wow, a bunch of friends getting together to really make this happen, like people who are passionate about Rob and passionate about Dan. And
I love the humor. It's the kind of stuff we couldn't do back then.
You don't really have expectations as an actor when you sign up for a sitcom that you're going to get to see yourself animated or that you'll be merchandise available for purchase at the NBC store.
I watched a lot of G.I. Joe as a kid, so to be in a G.I. Joe it's great.
This was probably the worst experience of my life, but I would love to do it again.
Then the fifth phase is people watch it and they're like, it's just a cartoon, who cares? Why did you ever bother hurting yourself over this? No one cares. You're the only one that cares. Why are you insane?